Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to Forensic Files, and this is Frozen Assets.
Up next, a well-known business owner is brutally attacked at work.
There was a lot of blood on the floor, on the walls, on the door.
Is it the work of a disgruntled employee?
No one trusted him. He leaves due to stress.
Or a robbery gone wrong?
I give her $1,000 and that she was killed. That $1,000 was never found.
A witness comes forward with a possible motive.
She made me promise
No,
that if anything
Aqua.
happened to her, I'd go immediately to the police.
The evidence answers some questions and raises many more.
It didn't look planned. It just basically probably happened.
For years, George Hansen and Mary Ann Clippery ran Zulu's Remodeling as business partners in Loves Park, Illinois. And they were quite a pair. Their homespun television commercials helped make their business a success.
At Al Zulu, you don't move and fruitful. Yeah.
One call does it all. Marianne ran the finance and business side. George ran the construction crew, maintenance, buying products, that sort of thing.
Oh,
By 2004, Mary Ann told her partner she wanted to retire.
Very nice person, very kind. She would do anything for anybody, but she wanted to, start enjoying life a little bit. To get the fruits of her labor.
A few days before the Christmas holiday, after everyone else had left, Mary Ann stayed late to go over the books. As she was about to lock up the office to leave, she was viciously attacked. The next morning, her partner, George Hansen, and another employee found Mary Ann's body when they arrived for work.
I saw all the blood around Mary Ann. I've never seen a dead body before. And nothing that horrible.
Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene.
Every morning, I always went into her office to tell her to have a good day. And, of course, that's what you got back. And that's the last time I spoke to her.
She had substantial head injuries, and that the pathologist determined that she had suffered at least 3 blows to the back of her head.
Crime scene technicians found some unusual clues. There was fresh blood on top of coagulated blood, which meant there were 2 separate altercations.
You could tell that she was hit in the hallway first, at least twice. And when she was down for a minimum of 15 minutes before he knelt on her back and beat her at least 2 more times.
Made you question why that person then would go back to her and beat her more.
Mary Ann's purse was missing, an indication the motive might have been robbery. But nothing else had been taken from the office.
We would expect anything of real value that individuals could carry would be missing. Nothing was missing from the business.
Mary Ann was a 69-year-old widow, the mother of 5 grown children.
I'm visually impaired. She was my eyes. She was my love. And she was my life. We had things to do. We weren't 2 old people sitting watching the clock go around.
In a search for suspects, investigators learned that the company recently fired an employee, Kevin Doyle, and his dislike for Mary Ann was well known.
No one trusted him, including Zulu employees. He was a former employee of El Zulus. He leaves due to stress, somewhat maybe of a nervous breakdown.
Doyle had a motive, and he still had keys to the building, making him the prime suspect.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann, and this is George, and we're from Al Zulo Remodeling Specialists.
Al Zulo's Remodeling was an institution in Loves Park, Illinois.
Al Zulo Remodeling has been a part of making your house a home.
Mary Ann was in some of the print advertising very early on in the business, kind of doing this Vanna White thing with the kitchen cabinets.
And Mary Ann Clippery was well known in the community for her generosity.
She would advance employees' salary out of her own pocket, not the company money.
Investigators were convinced Mary Ann was killed by a client or a co-worker.
It had to be somebody who was somewhat familiar with the layout of the business.
The investigation centered on a disgruntled ex-employee, Kevin Doyle.
He was not a reputable person. I believe that he was a lot of talk, but couldn't perform. I believe he said things that weren't accurate, and I believe that he was not to be trusted.
When questioned, Doyle said he was at home sick at the time of the murder, but there was no one to back up his story. Kevin Doyle had no criminal record, but the day after the murder, he did something very strange.
Kevin shows up and offers his assistance to the family and how he himself can keep that business afloat. We're thinking, okay, we have a suspect here. You know, you hear so often the over-cooperative witness, so to speak. Well, that was Kevin.
Police also learned that Mary Ann and her business partner, George Hansen, never got along.
And there's always a challenge between the two because the personalities are so much different. You're always in conflict. She was always very elegant, talked very well, carried herself very well. He did not appear to be what I would call a strong, ethical, honest person.
They were business partners, and they had worked together for many, many years. She didn't realize that he was angry over the fact that Al Zulo had made her an equal partner to the business when he died.
George denied there were problems and said his relationship with Mary Ann was a good one.
When you have a business relationship, just like a marriage, you've got to get along. If you don't get along, break it off. And we got along great.
When questioned by police, George said he had an alibi for the time of the murder.
He had gone to have drinks with his wife. Then he took his daughter to some driving school and had gone to a tanning salon. And I believe maybe at that point he finally went home.
Then, the day after the murder, there was an unexpected development. A local resident called police to report seeing a black garbage bag on top of the ice on the Rock River, which was 5 miles from the murder scene.
What really brought it to their attention is not too long before that, there was a baby discovered in a garbage bag.
The fire department used a ladder truck to lift the bag from the ice.
It was a substantial project. Several men had to go down over the river in the ice, which is dangerous, and retrieve the bag.
Inside the black garbage bag was another plastic bag filled with a variety of items: a sweater, a hammer, leather gloves, and a purse containing Mary Ann Clippery's identification.
I think when they found that bag, that connected everything.
Apparently, the killer threw the bag from the bridge, but missed the open water, and it landed on the ice instead.
If he looked over the bridge, he could took 2-3 steps and hit open water. How stupid can you be?
The sweater in the bag was covered in blood.
There was blood spatter inside the right sleeve, which goes along with the thought that the scene that was right-hand person the hair from behind.
Tests showed the blood was Mary Ann's. Employees recognized the sweater right away. It belonged to the original owner of the company, Al Zulo.
Mr. Zulo had this sweater for many, many years, and it was always in our office. Other people put it on too once in a while when they got cold.
Scientists looked for areas on the sweater that might contain skin cells.
I swabbed the collar of the sweater to determine the wearer of the sweater.
Would these skin cells identify the killer? Police had two suspects in the murder of Marianne Clippery, her business partner, George Hansen, and a disgruntled employee, Kevin Doyle. Forensic testing of the bloody sweater found in the discarded plastic bag with Marianne's personal belongings found skin cells on the collar. The skin cells provided a DNA profile.
When I analyzed the swabbing of the collar to determine where it matched George Hansen's profile, and it didn't match anybody else's profile.
But that didn't prove he was the killer. The sweater belonged to the original business owner, Al Zullo, and remained in the company closet. Other employees, in addition to George Hansen, occasionally wore it.
I started using the sweater in the wintertime, and I would wear it. Then, of course, other people put it on too once in a while when they got cold.
Then police discovered another bizarre piece of information. A forensic analysis of Marianne's coffee cup found a large amount of a prescription sleep medication. But Marianne hadn't been prescribed this medication.
Shortly after drinking some coffee, she became very ill. This also happened after eating salads.
She would fall asleep at her desk in the afternoons.
When police asked who had access to Marianne's food, only one name surfaced.
She would come in feeling fine in the mornings. George Hansen made it a point to hand deliver her coffee.
Then Marianne's boyfriend told police about a possible motive. It was something Marianne told him about shortly before her death.
She made me promise to her that if anything happened to her, I'd go immediately to the police with my knowledge.
Marianne had sent out Christmas cards to some of the clients. A couple of these clients returned those cards back to the business with notes informing them, of the problems that they were suffering.
These clients told Marianne they weren't getting paid, but internal company records showed they had been paid. Marianne did some amateur forensic accounting and learned that her business partner, George Hansen, was stealing from the company.
He was collecting money from the customers, and then he was depositing money in his own account.
Marianne discovered that George had stolen up to $100,000.
He was not only taking actual monies coming in, but also he had a little side business going where he would charge supplies through the Al Zullo company and use them for his personal projects.
Marianne was shocked to learn the company was in danger of bankruptcy.
I knew of it, but there's no way I could have told anyone. If I'd have told anyone, Marianne and my friendship would have been over immediately. I had to swear to her in secrecy.
According to her boyfriend, Marianne was going to confront Hansen on the afternoon of her murder.
Whenever they had a confrontation, they never did it in front of the employees. It was always behind closed doors. We do know that they had some type of a meeting that day.
When questioned by police, George Hansen didn't deny he was stealing money, but said Marianne was in on it too.
I was depositing and we were splitting the money.
However, Marianne's financial record showed her transactions were consistent with the amount of her salary and nothing more. Jean Sundin was outraged by Hansen's accusation.
I knew he was lying. Lying through his teeth. He couldn't look at me.
And police soon found George had another possible motive.
If he did kill her and got away with it, and he would collect the $150,000 in insurance policy that he's had on the other. He's probably using this as a vehicle to generate the money to buy the business.
Then police got another tip. On the day after Marianne's murder, a witness saw a man on the bridge over the Rock River. The evidence from Marianne's murder was found later that day on the ice beneath this bridge.
The person who called the police saw this truck that kept driving by the bag, kind of like looking at it or trying to get it, and thought that that was just suspicious. So called the police.
This truck was distinctive. It had vanity license plates that spelled out Zulu, the name of Mary Ann and George's business. And George was the only person in the company whose vehicle had these plates.
What was so fascinating is when his car was searched, they found a large fishing lure, rope, and some other objects which would lead a person to believe that he was going to actually try to fish that bag from the bridge.
Investigators needed to look closer at the items inside that bag to see if anything would prove Hansen was the killer.
I did not kill Mary Ann.
From the beginning, police thought Mary Ann Clippery was killed by someone she worked with.
That certainly helps our focus, knowing that this is an inside job, and that narrows the playing field down.
George Hansen had a motive. Mary Ann could prove he was stealing from the company.
She informed Hansen she was, in fact, going to go to the authorities over his business practices.
Scientists analyzed the plastic bag, which contained the weapon used in Mary Ann Clippery's murder. They put it in a sealed chamber filled with cyanoacrylate, fumes from superglue. These fumes stick to the oils in human fingerprints.
I processed the items with fingerprint powder. This is just a fine black powder that I just dusted over the surface. The powder will adhere to the superglue developed fingerprints and make them visible.
They found 3 distinct fingerprints and 1 palm print. Those prints matched George Hansen. Investigators also found gloves inside the bag, covered with Mary Ann's blood. DNA tests of skin cells left in the gloves also matched George Hansen.
All of them had Mary Ann's blood on them, and the gloves and the sweater had George Hansen's DNA on them as well.
The DNA was proof George was wearing the sweater and the gloves as the fatal blows were struck. And investigators found the source of the prescription sleep medication found in Mary Ann's coffee cup.
We tracked down Mr. Hansen's sister, who signed a statement stating that she was sending him these pills. In return, he would give her like $25 a month.
George Hansen was arrested and charged with murder. Prosecutors believe the motive was financial.
They want to buy a business and they have the money, and so he's going to collect some insurance money on her as a business partnership and inherit the business or buy the business out, and their life goes on.
Prosecutors believe Mary Ann waited until all the employees left before confronting Hansen with the evidence of embezzlement.
I see entries in your handwriting. The clients clearly have been paid. Of course they've been paid.
She estimated he stole more than $100,000 from the company. He could either pay the money back or Mary Ann was going to report him to police. Hansen, however, chose another option, murder. As Mary Ann was about to walk out through the back door, Hansen struck her in the head with a hammer. While Hansen staged the scene to look like a robbery, he discovered that Mary Ann wasn't dead, so he struck her again, creating more blood spatter on top of the coagulated blood, proof of 2 separate beatings. He put his sweater, gloves, and the hammer, along with Mary Ann's purse, into the bag. On his way home, he dropped the bag into the river. But it was winter time, and he missed the open water by about 5 feet, and it landed on the ice.
I'd like to have seen his face when that bag hit the ice and he heard a large plunk instead of a splash.
The theory was to drop the bag into the water and have it float away.
Later, A witness saw Hansen's car driving back and forth over the Rock River Bridge, most likely contemplating how to retrieve the bag he tried to throw into the river. Once in custody, Hansen changed his story. He denied killing Mary Ann, but admitted to a cover-up. He said he found Mary Ann's body when he first got to work, thought he'd be blamed for her murder, so he removed the items that belonged to him from the scene.
That's where I goofed up, really. I saw a hammer and gloves there, which were mine. I saw all the blood around Mary Ann. I panicked. I didn't call 911. And I picked everything up, put them in a bag, and left.
But the jury didn't believe it. George Hansen was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison.
I'm in here for the rest of my life. It took longer for the jury to pick a foreman than it did to come back with a guilty verdict.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann, and this is George of Alzula Remodeling Specialists. And while the boss is away, we will pay.
We will give you a 5% discount on any new...
What was once a prosperous enterprise ended in dissection and murder. But forensic evidence and Mother Nature helped solve the mystery.
What are the odds of going to a river with the intent to sink a bag and have it hit solid ice? Knowing that you've already cased the river out, knowing that it's this wide open body of water, except for a few feet on each side, and he accidentally drops it in the wrong place.
If George wasn't so dumb, he wouldn't have found it. It would have been a lot tougher case to deal with.
George was banking on the fact that he had no witnesses.
You know, not just the blood spatter, but the fingerprints. And then, you know, the DNA off the sweater. All of those things that kind of pointed back toward George Hansen.
Up next, a vibrant, successful real estate professional is brutally murdered.
This involved the entire range of violence.
Even hardened professionals are troubled by what they see.
For there to be that much blood left at a scene, that's what we consider overkill.
Police find a possible witness and try hypnosis to get every detail.
How many times do you see a composite sketch and you're like, okay, this looks like just about every human being on the face of the planet?
It was a real whodunit. I hate whodunits.
The killer leaves behind a clue, but would it be enough?
People will kill for the most trivial of reasons.
On a hot summer day, a married couple decided to look at a sample home in the Craze Ranch housing development in McKinney, Texas. When they walked into the sample home, they couldn't find the sales associate. But they knew right away that something was wrong.
And they walked into the living room, and then they saw a blood trail leading into the kitchen.
And that's where they found the sales associate, Sarah Walker, in a pool of blood.
The victim was stabbed 27 times. There was an incredible struggle.
Furniture and plants were knocked over. It looked like the victim fought for her life.
It just didn't happen in a little 2x4 square area. If you can picture a barroom brawl, that's probably what was happening in that show house.
For there to be that much blood left at a scene, that's what we consider overkill.
Sarah Walker was 40 years old, recently divorced, and the mother of 2 children.
I answered the phone. It was the McKinney Police Department. He said, Sarah has been assaulted and as a result has died of her injuries. And I just started screaming, no, no, no.
Sarah worked for a real estate company showing model homes to potential buyers and was very successful. She also appeared in some sales videos.
D.R. Horton is so proud to be in a neighborhood like this. It stands out above all the rest.
She was thrilling and she was exciting and full of energy. She would walk into a room and she would just light up the place. She had enough energy for 4 or 5 people.
Police found a bank surveillance video recorded a few hours before Sarah's murder, showing her making a deposit. In the video, she was wearing an expensive ring and watch. Neither one was found on Sarah's body.
The watch wasn't at her home when we searched her home. It wasn't in her car. It wasn't anywhere in her office. So we started to think pretty soon that whoever had killed her had taken that ring and that watch. She had it on 2 hours before she died. That helps us prove that, in fact, a robbery occurred.
Police also discovered the killer most likely posed as a client.
She was talking to my cousin. She said, "I'm sorry, I have to go. Somebody just walked in," which means there's a customer here. I'm going to go sell a house.
Just 30 minutes later, Sarah was dead. It was hard for investigators to imagine a crime of this magnitude in an upscale housing development.
Things just didn't match, really. It just struck me as the last place I would expect a crime like this to occur.
We had a real whodunit on our hands if it was a random attack. We were very concerned that someone who would kill Sarah in this manner was somebody who would probably not hesitate to do this again.
With a killer free, no one, especially McKinney police, could sleep easily. As investigators analyzed the scene of Sarah Walker's murder, they quickly discovered that she was killed in the living room after a horrific struggle. It was also clear that the killer was injured too.
He turned the deadbolt knob and he closed the blinds, but his hand was already cut, so he left his blood in both of those places. And then at some point he dragged Sarah into the kitchen and he tried to clean up because that was his blood in the sink.
Investigators also found perfectly round drops of blood on the floor of the kitchen near the body.
That shape is indicative of blood being dripped straight down, from a 90-degree angle, straight down.
The blood evidence provided police with the killer's DNA profile. At the autopsy, the medical examiner discovered no sign of sexual assault, but he did find something extremely unusual. Apparently, during the struggle, the killer bit the victim on the neck.
It almost brought this crime down to the level of savagery. I'm looking at the evidence of one animal biting this woman because she's some sort of prey for him that he's going to take and do with what he wants to. And it really was a disgusting feeling.
In a search for suspects, investigators first looked into Sarah's personal life. They discovered that Sarah had recently been divorced from her second husband, Randy Tate.
There was no love lost between the Walker family and Randy Tate. Let's put it that way.
Randy Tate was the last known person to see Sarah alive. Sarah dropped their son off at his house earlier that morning before she went to work.
Bottom line is I wanted to catch whoever did this.
According to her family and friends, it was a divorce she did not want. She wasn't happy with it. She was hurt by it. So we knew that there were some tough feelings.
Randy Tate claimed he had an alibi, that he was playing golf with friends at the time of the murder.
He was initially very cooperative, but then started to become hesitant in our mind to cooperate when it came to DNA and that sort of thing, and seemed to be very angry.
But Tate did provide his DNA, and it did not match the blood DNA at the crime scene. Next, investigators checked an internet dating site that Sarah joined called MillionaireMatch.com.
When Sarah got divorced, that was very difficult on her self-esteem. It was very hard to get back into the dating world.
Sarah didn't date many men since her divorce. But when your photograph is on an internet dating site profile, there's always the risk of danger.
Think about it this way. If I exchange one email with a random stranger, or if I just write something like, "No thanks, I'm not interested," you have a suspect right there. If you return 30 or 40 no thank yous in a week, and trust me, women get inundated with that many requests, Well, you've got 40 suspects.
Investigators interviewed all of the men Sarah spoke to from the site. Each provided a DNA sample, and all were eliminated. By this time, several weeks had passed, and the trail of Sarah's killer was turning cold. Then, unexpectedly, Nelson Villavicencio, the husband of another realtor, came forward with some new information. He said, on the morning of Sarah's murder, his wife got a call from a man who identified himself as Chan Lee. He wanted to see the model home located across the street from the home where Sarah was killed.
She felt a little suspicious about him and wondered if he was legitimate. And she tried to call the hotel he said he was at to find out what time he was coming, and he was not in the room that he said he was in.
In fact, no Chan Lee was registered at the hotel, but she still agreed to meet him.
Remember, when you're in the real estate business, you're in the business of making a commission. So you're going to accept all comers because you want to sell that house. You want to make that commission.
The realtor did take precautions.
My wife asked me if I was willing to come along, and I said yes. And I did it for my reasons.
When they arrived, an Asian male drove up in a white Mustang.
He had a t-shirt, no sleeves, jeans, sneakers, very athletic. And I asked him, excuse me, sir, is your name Chan Lee? And he looked up in the sky, did not make any eye contact with me, and sort of gave me a vague look saying like no, but he didn't express anything.
The man walked quickly to his car and drove away. While Nelson and his wife waited in the townhome, they saw Sarah Walker arrive for work across the street.
I yelled at my wife, come and check this out. There's a beautiful, striking blonde coming out of this sports car, and she's going to the model. My wife said, oh, that's Sarah. And I said, oh, Sarah's looking very good. She said, well, yeah.
When Nelson and his wife realized that their appointment was a no-show, they left and saw the white Mustang parked next to Sarah Walker's car. Nelson said they considered stopping by to say hello to Sarah.
I said, well, are we going to go visit with Sarah? And my wife said, no, we're hungry, so we left.
They left at approximately 1 p.m. Sarah's body was discovered 20 minutes later.
If they had walked in prior to the defendant killing Sarah, would we have 3 bodies?
The possibility of we have visited Sarah and found myself and ourselves in the middle of it, of something terrible. It will always be in my mind.
I consider Nelson's wife to be very lucky. I think there's a high likelihood that she would have been the victim that day had she not brought her husband along with her to that subdivision.
Police now had a possible eyewitness, but would it be enough? Real estate saleswoman Sarah Walker was robbed and murdered in the sample home of an upscale neighborhood housing development. Her friends and family reacted with disbelief.
The family has suffered beyond imagination.
I believe she deemed it to be safe. She was very, very excited about the community when she was first placed over there. My fondest memory of Sarah, she would laugh at all of my jokes, whether they were funny or whether they were stupid. She would still just laugh, and so that always made you feel good.
In a fortunate turn of events, a witness came forward telling police he might have seen Sarah's killer. Unfortunately, by the time he came forward, several weeks had passed, and police feared he might have forgotten some of the man's physical characteristics.
Nelson just had such a brief look at this person. I was hopeful, but I was actually kind of doubtful that it was going to work.
So police decided to try forensic hypnosis before asking Nelson any questions about the man's description.
The purpose of forensic hypnosis is to bring out the detailed memory from the subconscious.
Nelson was sent to Richard Shing, a Texas Ranger and a trained forensic hypnotist.
You get them relaxed, and then in that relaxed state, you bring up a date or an offense and place them back in a position to where they were, where they might recall an incident.
Forensic hypnosis has been used by law enforcement since the 1800s. In Texas, they've reported a 75% success rate.
Under hypnosis, the images in your mind, the remembrances become so much clearer that I've got a lot of faith in his hypnosis.
The memory is already there in his mind. The memory, I'm not placing a memory in his mind. It's already there. We're just actually going back and revisiting that day and time.
The hypnotist wanted Nelson to think of the incident as if he were watching a movie. And then freeze frame the image of the man he saw at the model home. Nelson described the suspect as Asian, muscular, around 27 years old, 5'7" tall, with a buzz haircut. After he described each feature, he then looked through a book of photographs to choose the most similar.
Everyone, if you look closely, they have different shaped eyes and mouths and noses. And that book gives the witness an opportunity to flip through the pages and pick out different features that the suspect had.
Slowly, an image emerged of the man Nelson saw that day.
I was saying that with these facts and this sketch, we'll hit jackpot.
The composite drawing kind of brought the case back to the front burner again, because for a while we had nothing.
The sketch was released to the media and immediately produced results. Yet another local real estate agent said she recognized the man. She rented a home to him. And she said once he came to her home asking to use her phone. When she refused to let him inside, he grew angry.
He's banging on her back door, and now she's terrified. Her dog's going crazy. This guy's now in her backyard banging on her back door. So then she calls the police.
Police identified the man as 25-year-old Kasul Chantakaman. His parents were from Laos, but he was born in the U.S. A background check indicated he drove a white Mustang, worked as a delivery truck driver, and had a history of violence.
From age 15 forward, he was in jail. He assaulted a classmate, severe enough to be sent to juvenile detention when he was 15. He was out on that offense for several months and then stole a car.
After that, he robbed and kidnapped 2 elderly women in North Carolina. He was released on parole just 6 months before Sarah Walker's murder.
He was paroled to Texas because his sister lived here, and his sister was willing to help him try to get his life back on course.
When he was interrogated by police, Kasul denied any involvement in Sarah Walker's murder.
What y'all doing, man? I know what's happening. We're trying to find out the truth. What I think you know. What truth, man? That you ran in that house and you washed your hands or you went over there and got a drink of water.
Kasul's left hand was covered with recently healed scars, as if he'd been in a knife fight.
The scars weren't lined up all along the same plane. They were kind of going every which way.
And police had a secret weapon, the bite mark on Sarah's body. Would it match Kasul's teeth? Thanks to an eyewitness and forensic hypnosis, investigators now had a suspect in the murder of Sarah Walker, 25-year-old Kasul Chantakaman. Although he denied any involvement, prosecutors were convinced that he was the killer.
Kasul is a psychopath and a sociopath. And by that I mean that no matter where he is, he's always thinking about himself first. It's all about him. What can he get for himself? What can he do for himself? And others are objects to be used for his pleasure, for his needs.
Say your name for me, please. Kasul Chantakaman.
Since the perpetrator bit the victim, Sarah Walker, investigators took photographs of Kasul's teeth and made dental impressions. The impressions were then compared to images of the bite mark.
What we tried to do is we tried to make it not match. We tried to rotate the models. We tried to flip them around. We tried to make it not work. And it just kept going right back to perfect match. It was as positive as I've ever been about doing a forensic dentistry case.
Ironically, evidence found on Kasul's cell phone indicated he had a fascination with biting.
He'd been fantasizing about this. He had a photograph on his cell phone of him pretending to bite his own dog.
Finally, Kasul's DNA profile matched the DNA of the blood found on the floor next to Sarah's body.
Certainly, anytime you have DNA, I can't tell you how valuable that is in today's environment with jurors. They appreciate it, they accept it, and since it's specific to one individual, it's invaluable to us as prosecutors.
Prosecutors believe Kasul preyed on female real estate agents because they often worked alone. On that tragic day in McKinney, Texas, the evidence shows that Kasul called his first target, asking her to meet him at the model home. But she sensed trouble and brought her husband, which frightened him away.
Excuse me, sir. Are you Chen Li?
But Kasul didn't give up. He saw there was another model home across the street. And he saw Sarah Walker arrive for work.
Oh, you know what? Somebody just walked in. I wonder if it's down.
Prosecutors believe he went inside and tried to rob Sarah.
Now watch.
There was a fight. While trying to subdue her, Kasul bit her. Then he used his knife and stabbed her more than 20 times and cut himself in the process. Nelson Villavicencio and his wife were just outside while the murder occurred. Had they stopped in to say hello to Sarah, they too might have been victims.
He would not have stopped. He definitely would have kept going.
A beautiful, successful woman. Her life tragically cut short. Sarah's family still tries to cope with the loss.
Although she's not here with us now, she is in a place that we all dream of, that we all hear of. And I believe that she's probably doing the same thing up there as she did while she was here, which is helping people find their home.
In October of 2006, Kasul was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death.
People will kill for the most trivial of reasons that no rational person would ever imagine.
What the science did in this case is it made that defense attorney get up in his opening statement and say, my client is guilty and this was a robbery gone bad. He would not have said that if we hadn't had the physical evidence that we had in this case.
This case turned out to be the perfect marriage of good police work, excellent science, and prosecutorial expertise. It was the perfect blend of all three of those things coming together to where we got this case from the day Sarah was murdered until he was convicted and sentenced.